Good morning and welcome to Sunday Square Off. I'm Bram Resnick. On today's show, a look ahead to the legislature's new session starting Monday. What will they do for us or to us? We have much more in store. Here's the rundown. Drip, drip, drip. Time's running out for Arizona to protect our vital water supply. What's at stake for all of us, and will a deal get done?
Here, we know each other. Name calling and game playing don't work.
A house divided. Governor Ducey says our lawmakers play well together. How will that play out in the Arizona House, where Republicans have a slim one-vote majority? Is this a rare bipartisan moment?
I know at least once she was sexually assaulted, which is way too many times.
A disabled patient is raped, then gives birth to a baby boy, and no one at her care home knew she was pregnant? What's being done to defend the defenseless? And police are searching for the man who raped that 29-year-old woman. She's lived in a vegetative state at a Phoenix care home for most of her life, since a near drowning as a child. Now, there is a lot we still don't know about what happened, but this horrifying crime has alarmed advocates for the developmentally disabled. They say this is more common than we know. Joining me is John Myers, Executive Director of the ARC Arizona. It serves Chandler, Gilbert, and the state. He's a leader of a major effort to protect developmentally disabled Arizonans and the elderly in care homes. Welcome to Square Off.
Thank you very much.
The crime against this woman is shocking. Should we be surprised?
We should be horrified. Unfortunately, from my perspective, we should not be surprised. The protections in place for individuals with developmental disabilities in long-term care settings are unfortunately nowhere near what they should be. And this is true not only in Arizona, but this is true in most states throughout the U.S.
Now, you've been part of an ongoing effort encompassing a lot of advocates here in Arizona to do something, meeting about this issue. What's the focus been?
The focus is on, first of all, understanding the scope of the problem, and then secondly, identifying the appropriate steps to take to ensure that these kinds of incidents are not allowed to happen again, and certainly that the perpetrators of things like this are caught and prosecuted.
So where are the gaps in protecting folks like that woman?
Well, there are several areas in Arizona in particular where we're focusing our attention. First of all, there is no requirement for providers who contract with the Division of Developmental Disabilities. There's no requirement that they provide sexual abuse training for their staff, either in the identification or prevention or reporting of sexual abuse or rape instances. So that has to be addressed immediately. That training has to be implemented for staff statewide. In addition, there have to be better protections and better reporting. One of the issues that we find is that there simply isn't adequate or comprehensive data kept by the state of Arizona on incidents like this and the follow-up and the resolution of them.
So it's a shock, but you don't necessarily know how bad this problem is.
We do not, in any kind of comprehensive way, know how bad the problem is. We know anecdotally that incidents are happening around the state far too commonly, and we know that on a nationwide level, this is an epidemic.
An epidemic. You know, I was reviewing Hacienda Healthcare's contract with the state. And I should remind folks, these folks, all this care is paid for by us, the taxpayer.
Yes.
That's through Medicaid, Medicare,
yes.
State and federal programs. I was reviewing Hacienda Healthcare's contract with the state, and it includes sexual abuse and molestation insurance. And I imagine that's pretty much boilerplate at many organizations.
It is.
So there is that insurance that you're telling me they're not really doing enough to protect themselves from liability.
Well, one of the ironies of the contracting system with the state right now is that providers are required to carry sexual abuse and molestation insurance, but there is nothing in the contracts that requires them to train their staff to identify or prevent sexual abuse or molestation.
Okay, so my understanding is your working group, you're working on getting some research out, then this happened, and now there's more urgency in getting action to the legislature. Am I understanding that right?
That's correct. Several months ago, the Arizona Developmental Disabilities Planning Council convened a task group to focus on, first of all, getting better data for what's happening and identifying the scope of the problem in Arizona, and as a second step, then identifying the appropriate solutions to ensure that rape, molestation, other forms of sexual abuse are not allowed in long-term care settings in the state.
So if you could right now, we're going to have a couple top legislators on the show in just a minute. Can you check off one or two things you'd like to see the legislature do this session?
Yes. Well, as I mentioned just a moment ago, we need to institute policies through the contracting system with DDD and with other departments and divisions throughout the state to ensure that staff are trained to identify sexual abuse when it's happening. And then secondly, we need to establish policies within these various divisions and agencies to ensure that data is being kept so that we as advocacy agencies, we as service providers can identify where problems have occurred in the past and understand how we can prevent these things from happening going forward.
So for viewers watching this who may have a loved one in one of these settings, what's your advice to them about how they can best protect that person?
Well, first I would say don't panic. We know that these things occur. We are not entirely convinced that long-term care settings are the primary issue or the only issue. We believe that the vast number of providers throughout the state are doing a fantastic job of taking care of the people in their charge. But they need to be vigilant. Family members, other caregivers, other loved ones need to be vigilant when they go into long-term care settings, whether it's a developmental home, a long-term or an ICF or a group home. They need to look for signs. They need to, first of all, educate themselves on what the signs of sexual abuse are, and then look for those signs and talk with their loved ones. One of the problems, again, nationwide, is that we often don't listen to and don't believe the individual with the disability himself or herself when they say something has happened. We need to listen to those individuals. We need to take at face value what they say and then follow up on that. So if a family member says something to a loved one when they're visiting them in their group home or in their developmental home, listen and then follow up with the provider, and if necessary, follow up with Adult Protective Services.
All right, John Myers of the ARC Arizona, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
When we come back, the state legislature reopens for business on Monday. We'll hear how Republican and Democratic leaders in the House plan to work for the good of all of us. And there's an incentive. Republicans have just a one-vote majority. Plus, our resident water expert on Arizona's looming deadline to cut a deal protecting our water supply. What happens if they don't? Stay with us.